Hello and welcome back. We are looking at our second week of work right now, and it kind of ties in, it's kind of part of Unit 1. And so today's video might be a little bit redundant, and I apologize. I think one thing, when I think of assessment practices, I'm kind of a anomaly in education. Maybe some of you can relate. I am a language arts, writing, words person who really secretly loves data and statistics. I really hate math, which is sort of the irony there, but the logic and the communication and the results that I see through assessment practices, I'm very interested in it. It's just something that has always intrigued me and made sense to me. So back to my redundancy in this video today. If what I go over right now has already been covered, I just want to make sure that I over communicate. I'm kind of modeling this on purpose. Those of you who have been in online education in the past, perhaps either as a student or as an instructor, know that even in face to face, we lose a lot, but so much more can be lost or misinterpreted or misunderstood when we don't have that in the moment time to clarify, read our students' faces to see if they're really getting something. And I think part of assessment is really over communicating what it is our objectives are and what it is our expectations are. And then finally, what do we notice in terms of student growth and how to communicate that to them. So a little side thought or whatever, but just wanted to explain maybe some of the redundancy today and apologize for it, but not really entirely. It's kind of intentional. This week, I just Sarah found this quote for me. Sarah's the course designer, one of the course designers for this course, and I think it's really worth reading. So I'll let you look at it for just a second as I resize my screen here. Okay, so we have some things to think about as we think about blending our classes and taking them online. And we have some learning outcomes listed here, but what I'm really interested in doing is going through the activities for this week to make sure we're all very clear on them. What you're going to do is click onto HTML and then another chapter of a book. And these resources are a starting point. By all means, if you have other resources that just really capture your attention, please add them. In fact, I'm going to make myself a little note, literally here. I found one that I think might work well. It's just an extra this week, not a required reading, but just something to supplement, because obviously our knowledge and growth is changing all the time about assessment practices, and there are more and more tools out there. We don't want to get too far ahead in the class, but so this week we're going to, sorry about that, lay the foundation for why we even assess learning. And I'm sure we've all had those moments where we wonder, why am I even doing this? And I think that when I began teaching, a lot of my assessment practice was fueled by a fear motivation of, one, pleasing whoever it was that was my supervisor to make sure I had proof that I really was teaching something. And I think second of all, I did a lot of assessment that was intended to set students up a little bit for, I thought it was a challenge, but I think at times it could have even set them up for frustration. So I want to take a step back and just really do a gut check of honesty and why are we even assessing learning? And everything we look at through here, we're filtering through that blended and online context, because that's what this is all about, right? So specifically here, not just why do we assess learning macro level, but why do we assess learning at our in the online classroom? Why does the blended classroom need assessment practices? And I know there's some obvious answers, but I want to push that envelope a little bit to even think, what is it that's unique in the blended classroom that we can do that we may not have the ability to do if we are just running a traditional classroom. Okay, so jumping off into that, then our second activity, I'm sorry, there's a post prompt here. I'm going to let you read that on your own. We're looking at functions of assessment. What does it serve? I'll let you look at that on your own. Again, you can read. The second activity this week is going to take us to how assessments are changing. We know they are. And again, please feel free to add other resources as you come along and share them out. We'd love to hear them. But just some strategies. And what we're going to do with this particular activity is create something. I'd like to create some sort of table, or if you're fancy with infographics, I think some of those are so just so appealing. But some sort of table that takes one type of assessment and compares the strengths and challenges of using that assessment in the 3 different learning environments. So I know that many of us are looking more at blended learning right now than anything, but let's take it to the extremes of online, face-to-face, and then blended in the middle, and look at how maybe a test, a multiple choice test, how is that going to look? Online, blended, and face-to-face. What are the particular challenges, benefits, concerns, strengths, weaknesses, and whatnot that you see happening, so that we're reframing the context that we're assessing in and starting to think about ways that we can creatively assess in a blended or online environment. And you're going to post that in your blog. What we're trying to do is start with discussions that are more like topical and more maybe philosophical, then move into the blog that blends our philosophy and something maybe more practical in terms of how this will look in a classroom. And then the wiki is going to be, our assessment portfolio is meant to be something that you take away and really use. It's really where we put our assessment practices into writing so that we can use them and transfer them into our classes later. Okay, then we're going to revisit each of these and both the discussion and blog for feedback for one another. And this is all happening this week. I know it's fast and furious. For your assessment portfolio, as I mentioned already, this is something that you're creating to build on later, and so we're laying the foundation in terms of just creating that manifesto. I think we mentioned that last week. I had a student challenge that and said, how can I do that right at the beginning of the class when I'm just learning? That's why it's in a wiki. You can go back and edit. In fact, sometimes I think it's interesting to have your first ideas about assessments or about whatever it is that we're studying in something like this, and then go back after the journey of learning and see how we've changed or established those ideas or questioned those ideas, and maybe even come back to some of the same ideas that we started with. So that's part of the purpose here. And you can use whatever way you'd like. I mean, if you want to make it a letter to yourself, if you want to make it a chart, whatever is most appropriate for you. I want to keep the wiki very, very practical. And so when I think of a philosophy for me in a blended classroom, I want something personally, and this is just me, this is not to impose my preference on you, but I want something that I can post in my classroom that even students can see. I want something that reminds me, that I might even put at the front of my binder for that course, that I might post in my online course, the LMS portion of my blended classroom, so that it's very clear. Maybe a few commitment statements, maybe a contract form between student and instructor. And this will also be shaped by the age and academic levels that you're going to be presenting to. Right now I'm teaching a blended classroom for a basic writing course for mostly freshmen, traditional freshmen. We meet face-to-face 2 times a week, but all of our writing and feedback to one another, we're streaming through online contexts. And part of what I'm doing is I'm using that as a way to assess students. I've always felt like I've fallen a little bit short in really keeping the student on student, that peer editing piece in a writing classroom, keeping that sharp and really assessing it. And I'm excited that I'm going to have it in writing now. And so one of my items on my manifesto might be to keep writing practices, even informal ones, measurable And I'm going to do that through the Blended Classroom Discussion Board, because then I have a record of the conversations that took place, and it keeps students more accountable. Again, just kind of talking off the cuff here, but these are what we're covering this week. I know it's a short week with the Labor Day holiday, and we are moving fast, so please keep me posted on how you're doing, and I will try to get in very quickly early in the week to give you some feedback on your first postings from last week, so that you go in, so that you feel like you at least know what to expect, but there are no gotchas, because that might also be on my assessment practices manifesto is to never create a gotcha scenario where my assessment is meant to trap a student into a certain grade. Okay, on that note, have a great long weekend. If you're watching this on a Tuesday, I hope your weekend was great, and I look forward to reading your input and growing along with you in our assessment practices for the blended and online classroom.